Hi, and welcome. I am Ryan Keys, the host of the School of Consciousness podcast. This is live on our community at soc.live. If you want to take full advantage of behind the scenes and other content that helps you create your own reality and retell a new story, come to soc.live. I am Ryan Keys, live in the community once again. And today I am going to, like Shrek, I'm going to crack myself open like an onion. And if I cry, fair warning, men do cry, and I know that there's this stigma that real warriors, real alpha men, real sigma men don't cry, and I'm going to tell you. I may not, because I've dealt with most of the positions that are in that story, but to be honest, you just never know because you're in the flow, so you don't know where that information is going to go. So as you can see, the title of this is Digging Deep, Letting Go of the Past, and I'm going to go over, this can be a two-part podcast. We're going to try to figure out a way to move forward because I would say 80% of the world at the moment is stuck. They may not even know it. They might be in a position where they're stuck in a rut, connected to a reality that they really don't want and they don't know how to get out of it. So we have to acknowledge it first, acknowledge, accept, and then realign, re-energize, and retell the story. So before I begin, just because this is me and I'm going to unfold parts of myself, I'd like to start this out with a little bit of a blessing. And first, I just want to welcome you. And this is going to be a little bit of a transformative journey for myself. I don't know where this is going to go. We're going to keep it open, honest, and we're going to keep moving forward. There will be some side roads, I'm sure, but I don't know what will happen. And I just want to take a minute so that we can center ourselves and set our intentions for this experience. So many podcasts aren't personal, but your story is yours, and whatever you're going through, it may not affect other people, it may not impact other people, but on your own personal space, it is important to you, and it's really the only thing that you have to hold on to. And how can we create something new if we got to know ourselves so much with who we were, and it's very difficult to revision that. So just take a deep breath with me for a second. You don't have to close your eyes because we're calling it like it is. We want to be aware, and we want to bring awareness to this present moment. So eyes open, arms open, chest open, shoulders back, breathing in deep. We're gathering here today. We acknowledge the power that resides within each of us, the power to heal, the power to grow, the power to create. And we just ask that this gathering be a safe space. Guides, spirits, God, angels, whatever it is that aligns with good, strong vibration and love and learning and alignment with what's best in our best interest, please embrace our vulnerability and our openness. Allow us to explore the depths of our being. And may we be gentle with ourselves. Yes, and me, myself, as I open up. May we be gentle as we navigate uncharted waters of our past, retelling this story to release it and recognize that growth comes from understanding and acceptance. And I'm just going to do a little affirmation. I'm ready to recognize and this is for me personally, going into this story, I'm ready to recognize any areas that are holding me back. I release the grip of my past. I welcome the opportunity to create a new and empowering story for my life. I embrace the journey of self-discovery, knowing that I have the strength to face any challenges that arise. I'm open to healing. I'm open to growth. I'm open to transformation. And I wholeheartedly let go of any limiting beliefs or attachments to my old story. Anything that no longer serves me or serves my best interest, I'm free to evolve and reinvent myself. And today I step into my power and I embrace change and possibility because I'm the author of my own narrative and I choose to create a future filled with purpose and joy and fulfillment. I, like you, am worthy of success and happiness and love, and so it is. And so it is. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking a step in this journey inward with me and bringing a certain form of reality to put a new face on this. as you saw, I'm going to put the picture up here so that you can see that. It's going to be right down. Let's see, where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to bring it up a little bit bigger just so you can see it. So this was this side of my face, the right side. And I'll tell you, it was the most life-changing event that I've ever encountered. And I was 21 years old. And I had the right side of my face crushed with a gun, helping a girl that I thought was being attacked. I don't know. I'm not sure. The details didn't come to me because obviously I ended up having a near-death experience and went into 13 and a half hours of surgery and 2 years of recovery, learning to walk, talk, and see again. And it was an event. And I'm not going to keep it up there because I don't really need that story anymore. And I will be honest, I really needed that story for so long. I needed that. The story that I relied on to be special, to be different, to get in the door of a job or a friendship, because it made me feel important, it made me feel special, it made me feel like that night I did something dumb, right? I didn't think. I wasn't aware. I was not aware. Yes, I made a move, I helped somebody, but my lack of awareness probably injured both of us. And back in 1981, there was no real 911. There was nobody to call. So you just had to kind of do your thing. And the thing that I've learned, everything. So I've learned with hindsight how much of this actually helped me to become who I am today. And it allowed me to kind of cherry pick portions of the story, not the pain, not the inconvenience, not the trauma and the PTSD and everything else associated with it that weighed me down. There was the difficulties for 10 years to get past it, not the disconnect, not the loss of memory for 6 years of my life, not having to learn to speak again or not being able to see and having seizures for years. Those aren't the things that are important. The important part was I had a near-death experience, and I've expressed this before on my YouTube channel, and I'll go into that again. And if any of you listening to this at any time have a near-death experience where you actually died, not close, not just like a dream or something like that. I mean, real, clinically. I was dead in surgery. I've died twice. I drowned for 5 minutes in a stunt, and then I was dead. I flatlined in the surgery, and I was going away. If you've actually encountered death clinically, contact me, and I would love to put you on the podcast and hear your story, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot that people can learn. This isn't about that story, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but I had a near-death experience that was a new dawn for me. It brought me out of the dogma. I left being a religious right-winger, not that, and I'm not using that as a political term, but I'm just using it as a term of like I was bound. I was like cinched up. I was going to seminary school to be a preacher. And this altered everything about me, altered my perception of myself. I just started to feel like I was looking good. I grew up very overweight, hazed and beaten up, and poor and unpopular. And I'd finally got to a space where I don't know, I grew and I won a modeling contest, and I ended up on Levi's, and my ego shot through the roof, and I thought I was somebody. Of course, I got knocked down quite quickly. And this was even after martial arts, right? I had been doing martial arts, and I got moved heavily, obviously, because I died. And going through this situation at the time, I didn't realize it was going to be my identity, right? I realized that I'd spent a lot of my life, like many of you, without an identity of my own. Most of it was given to me by my circumstances, my social status, or by my upbringing from the people that were in charge of my kind of personality. And this was my opportunity. This is the big break, 15 minutes, right? I was able to step into the limelight through pain and suffering and struggle and develop a new identity. Of course, my dad died that following year suddenly of an aneurysm, and a lot of things happened. I lost a lot of love in my life. And so unknowingly, this became an avenue and a conduit to love. I learned that being a victim could give me a voice. And I know many of you have encountered that at times, where being a victim, not on purpose, right? Because you light up when people give you attention. And you light up when somebody says, hey, I see you. And when they don't see you, you're dim and you feel drained and down and you don't have any identity. So then that story that you're suffering in becomes your identity. And it did that for me so many times without fail. And it really got the girls, I'll tell you. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. I was doing it because I didn't know any better. Even after a near death, encountering Krishnamurti in the otherworldly space and realizing that reincarnation was real and that I'd been studying many things about Christianity that don't line up on the other side completely, and that there's a bigger world than the book. It was very interesting, right? It was very interesting to have that information new to me and a lack of identity. So I molded my injury, I molded my suffering and my survivorship into a kind of a way to address my social standing, my society, my identity. It became one of the first things I would say when I would meet somebody. Oh, yeah, my face got crushed and it's titanium. And again, I was improvising with life, like many of you. I was improvising. I wasn't maliciously using that event to my advantage. I had been so low and lost. The suffering seduced me like it was light. My story became the light in the dark. It became a line out of the silence, of the solitude, of the isolation. It became my flashlight to shine around and say, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. And I didn't know about selfishness. I didn't know about these things. I was still 22, 23, 24. And it was a difficult time to learn who I was. And I recreated these into patterns, into different positions. These experiences shaped my behavior and my thinking. These emotions, whether positive or negative, they were part of a struggle. And that struggle kept me in this space where I felt that I had achieved something. So I needed to remind myself consistently that struggle, being in a state of fight or flight, being in that struggle, gave me the ability to prove my worth rather than to be able to use my wisdom, my intelligence, my intuition to be above the struggle, to be outside of the struggle. So my success would always piggyback on that story. My friendships would always start with that story. Who I was would always be intertwined with the story of that. And letting go of that past was not an option. Much like surviving cancer and being a survivor the rest of your life. It wasn't an option. I took this external experience, this event, and I internalized it. And I created this safety blanket. I created this space where I could literally, I could predict and project my future because I had such a starring role in my own story. So I knew if I cast new people in that story, they would show up. And all of this happened silently underneath myself. It happened away from my own acknowledgement. I created this dynamic that I didn't deserve that happened to me, so I wasn't getting what I deserved in life, and I was failing myself. So I was failing forward, right? I was using my face to get in the door. And the false levels of success, connection, and love that came from that, I was only creating lines to other people in the same vibration, the same level of the victim story. So we were becoming victims together, and then ironically, birds of a feather flock together. And then when we became victims together, that volume of energy was so large that it was really dangerous. I mean, lots of trouble would kind of swirl around that event. And there was a constant level of, like, what's happening, what's going on, and why am I in this space, and how do I get out of this? And I started to think, okay, so this can't be all there is. There has to be more. And Hollywood was the best place for a story like that. I think Mel Gibson started his career with the same similar story. And as fate would have it, a movie called Vanilla Sky was also being played at the same time. And Mel Gibson's movie, Man Without a Face. And this is how you know that synchronicity lines up for when you're a manifestor creator or when you're an architect. When you have a little something else in you that connects to matter and manifestation like that. Like many of you have heard me talk about the story of the sofa that I manifested within maybe 30 minutes that I wanted, that was at this place called Z Gallery, and suddenly didn't have the money for it, found the right sofa that looked exactly like that in a yard sale that was brand new, still wrapped in plastic, down the street. So I have this ability, this connection, I have this agreement with God, I guess, or source and myself, that I can manifest almost anything that I want right now. So I would manifest this connection with the victim story. And it became addictive. It became fulfilling. Living a life of fear can still fulfill you. Because you get a lot of attention when you're afraid. You get a lot of attention when you're scared. You get a lot of sympathy. You don't get healthy empathy, you get sympathy. But when you're suffering at that level and when you're so out of your potential, you recognize, you believe negativity can be a positive, right? When somebody's just giving you the remnants of what they really believe or what they really do, you just receive it and you think, oh my God, I'm getting so much. And I was getting just leftovers from people that were ready to leave me behind because my story was self-sabotaging. It was not a healthy story. So I want to go over these ideas that I used about getting over limiting beliefs and letting go of the past story, because your success in this world is not pivotal or based on what you've been through. It's based on who you became. And I know that sounds maybe a little bold to say, and some of you may not like that, but what you've been through, it doesn't matter. If there's some positives there that you can utilize in helping someone else, and you can use it like I'm using this now as an example, if it can be used as wisdom, wow, you can work with that. But if it tracks back into an emotional space to recreate the situation, to resuscitate the original injury or incident, because you need that energy. No, bad. It's not your fullest potential. You are falling back, right? You're now backseat driving. You got the car in reverse and you're trying to drive down the freeway backwards. You're fighting yourself. So to embrace your truth and your power, you have to let go of a lot of the things that you continue to tell yourself, because truth is by nature the context of who you are now. Your truth is your belief about yourself. Your truth is you at this moment. Your truth isn't when you were 10. Your truth isn't that, oh, you were molested, or, oh, you were doing this or that, right? That's not your truth. That's a time period in your life. The truth is what you take with you. The truth is what you evolve into. Your story isn't stuck. You're retelling it, and you may not realize it. Your story is ready to roll into a new chapter, a new space. Your story is so ready to move into the next part, the next role. And the character that you developed through the course of the story. Do you ever think, like, okay, like look at these, the villains in a story like Harry Potter or whatever it is. The villain, the person that can't get past the past, is always suffering, is always the one that gets sideways, always the one that gets killed, or always the one that's doing the bad stuff. Bad things happen, or they do bad things. These are the people that are stuck in that redundancy. They're stuck in that old story. We see it in on the screen. We see it in TVs. We see it in just the generic forms of reading, right? Poems. So we know it. You know this intimately, that what you need to do is you need to let go of what you've been telling yourself the whole time. And this is even in the love story. Because your love story, if you can't evolve in your own love for life and others, you're holding them hostage. You're holding the people in your past hostage if you can't let go of these old images of them and let them grow with you, right? So many people are in love with the past. And I'll guarantee you that hindsight perfects your story. I would say, and I try to recall my story, what happened to my face and all those things, as honestly as possible. But because of the time and because of the intensity that it happened, I can't remember everything. But just like the way your vision works, right? So your vision works the same way. It takes snapshots, and you don't see everything, but it fills in the areas that are kind of missing. This is why when riding a motorcycle is so dangerous. This is why you really want to wear like a fluorescent color, because it calls attention to an area that would just be filled in unconsciously with the snapshots that your eyes take to process through the brain. Life is the same way. Your memory is the same way. You're taking snapshots of the past and you're retelling it for your own personal gain. Hey, I hear you, bub. So you're retelling this story for your personal gain, for your personal involvement, and you may not even realize it. So you will gear the story to benefit the outcome that you're trying to portray, good or bad, right? If it's Bigfoot and you encountered a noise in the wilderness and suddenly you smelled it, you heard footsteps, and you never really did, but you filled it in unknowingly, unconsciously, because that's what we are. We're creators. And if we're spending so much of our time in the back seat and looking back, we create this story that doesn't exist, and we embellish. We embellish every story unknowingly. And they've proven this with, like, when they ask people at a traffic accident, right? The accident gets worse and changes over the course of the time and the distance from that event. So what I wanted kind of like break into is there's 5 ways that your past limits you and what you can do about those. And I'm going to let this little monkey out real quick. So those 5 ways, come on back. There we are. So this little monkey, the camera followed me. Isn't that awesome? So yeah, that was the little monkey. I let him out. So there's 5 ways that we can go into this about the limiting belief and how we can kind of stop these and what we can do to help ourselves to get past these old stories. Because these old stories are very important, right? They're very important. I was looking at the replay on YouTube. How hilarious. That's great that it just goes with me. So you've probably heard of something called the growth mindset, I'm sure. So we're talking about growth, right? We're talking about where you can find a place where you can approach this period of your life as a learning experience, where you can begin to kind of put this into perspective, and you can move from this fixed space where you believe something is set in stone, and you open yourself up to be able to bring it on board, but bring the best parts of it. And you realize that whatever happened to you can't be changed. So you can't rearrange. Like, I can't change what happened to my face, but I can challenge it. I can challenge the event. I can challenge the outcome. I can challenge the spaces in which I utilize those events to either my advantage, good or bad. And as I challenge those, I'm approaching this set as a place of growth. I'm looking at this so that I'm moving away from the fixed ideas, the fixed positioning, and I'm no longer seeing that aspect as something negative. I'm seeing it as something positive, and I'm really I'm taking it and I'm bringing it to the front of the class, and I'm making it something better. Like what I'm doing right now, what I'm doing with my story is an example of changing the belief, rewriting it, giving myself something different, a different outcome from the event. I'm repackaging it. I'm repurposing it. I'm taking a space where it could be perceived as failure or failing myself, or whether it's a setback, and I'm recreating this. I'm challenging that belief system. I'm realigning it. I'm moving from it not being right or wrong, but I'm saying, how can I set this into a space where I can make this growth? Where can I find the resiliency? Where can I take that setback and make it something beneficial? So I'm going to remind myself that event was not negative, wasn't bad. It may have, it brought its own set of issues, right? It was painful. Pain is part of life. But it was powerful. It showed me life and death. It showed me what I can survive. It showed me my ability to become even self-aware at this point in my life, to look back on how I moved from the event and how I held on to that story as who I was, and how I grew out of it, how I was able to get past it, how I was able to turn that setback into this insight that worked in my favor. So that and then what I'm doing is I'm clocking up, reconditioning. I'm clocking up my ability to break free from an old belief system, from what I believed about myself. I'm giving myself the ability to break out of the old, right? And all of us, I mean, there's not one of us that hasn't encountered something where we've conditioned ourselves to believe certain things about who we are, to believe things about the world around us, right? Even like Paul shared this link that I shared on Instagram about the holographic universe. And it's a very interesting aspect of how holograms hold on to the entire picture. And what I think that also would mean through correspondence, like a Hermetic philosophy, as above, so below, if we live in a holographic universe, so to speak, and a hologram would be if you broke, let's say you had a vase and you broke the vase. The smallest piece of the shard of the vase would still, if you were able to look at it in light, would still show you the whole vase. And it's a kind of a bad example, but that's an example to kind of show you that even our cell shows us who we are in many ways, more than you would even realize. So every way that we approach our life, when you alter your belief system about yourself, when you empower the places where you felt like you lost your power, when you, and you could say forgive. I'd like to say when you find gratitude. Let's don't even say forgive. Forgiveness has got this context of a religious belief, and I don't want to focus on religion right now. I want to focus on you being able to absolve yourself of a connection that is controlling you. So let's not say forgiveness, but when you can go into the event that is holding you back or the story that you're stuck in, and you can find gratitude there, and then you can give yourself a current version that has gone beyond that trial or tribulation or incident to who you are now that is not the same, where you can set those two events apart where you've seen growth. You've seen yourself break free. You start to define, because we start to define who we think we are and how we perceive the experience and what it was and what life threw at us. And then we start to limit ourselves. Like I would say that it'd be like having a fear of sharks. Like if I got bumped by a shark when I was younger, and then so it developed me having a fear of sharks. So that fear, that limiting belief makes me not enjoy the ocean as much as I could. So if I can overcome that limiting belief, whether it is through hardcore data or doing something where I confront the fear, where I confront the false information, and I'm able to retell it to myself and experience something that establishes a line of confidence around the information that I had adopted as a belief system and a conditioned belief, and I can move past that. And what happens is that my personal past is no longer the point of reference. It's the person that I am now. So rather than holding these markers of my personal past and allowing my personal beliefs that are conditioned to hold me back, I'm holding on to this person at the product of all of the past. I'm becoming aware of the product, the result, the resolve of the person. For instance, like here's a limiting belief. You believe you're not good enough or worthy enough for success or happiness. Your belief that you're not good enough is a limiting belief, and it's probably aligned with something that happened to you in the past, and you're not able to let it go because you're not challenging that limiting belief. And if you were to give yourself examples where you've gone beyond that belief, there's definitely times when you've exceeded your own self-limiting belief. Another limiting belief would be you believe you're not capable of making a difference. But then you open the door for somebody that's walking into the store, or you help somebody that's lost, right? Somebody comes up and asks you for money for gas, and you give them money not because you feel sorry for them or not because you want to look good. You just have extra money, and you're looking at it as a synchronicity. Well, I've got a couple extra dollars in my wallet. Why not? I'm not going to miss it. So I'm making a difference in somebody's life, even though my limiting belief means that I'm not capable of doing that. So there'll be moments when you've outdone that belief, or you believe the success or the goals that you want are out of reach. A lot of people use their color and their class or their creed or their sex in this particular one, where you believe that you can't get there because of your color. You can't get to that job that you want because of where you were born and what your history is. And that's not so. That's a conditioned belief that you are continuing to support by retelling it over and over and over. And then as you retell it, we look for support to the limiting belief. So you're supporting yourself with these limiting behaviors so that you don't go past what you know, because it's comfortable and it feels good, and you've found this resonance with something that limits your reality. And it's tough, right? And you have to repeat this so that it makes sense to you, right? So you repeat the story too many times. You repeat your suffering too many times. You repeat your codependency too many times. You repeat the victim story too many times. And people do this because they need to charge that emotion. You need to charge that story consistently. You need to charge that trauma, because the original incident will disappear. It will dissipate, because that's what the body does. That's what the being wants. That's what your highest self is trying to do. So you have to revive it, just like you're resuscitating somebody that's drowned. You have to breathe life into it. So you repeat it, and you find a way to repeat it to people that haven't heard it before. And you repeat it, and you infuse it with emotion. And then that emotion brings intention, and that intention ties you to that story. So you get stuck in this, experiencing it over and over and over. And this is where we can actually see that repetition and bringing up this connection, it actually reaffirms that if we change that behavior and we reaffirm it and we start switching that to something different, if we start going towards gratitude, it's like new biscuits and gravy, right? It's like going to something else. We know that it works because it's working wherever you're at right now in the victim story. Everything that you have to do to get out of the story, you're doing to stay in it, which is fantastic because you're a master at it. And this is where I always say that the law of attraction is always working. You're attracting to you what you really are either stuck in or you're selling yourself. So it's really this point of self-awareness, and I can tell you from personal experience, there comes a time when you tell yourself, you're like, what? Damn, I don't want to be this person anymore. I'm so much more. I don't want to be the Ryan that got his face crushed. I don't want to be the Ryan that's afraid of sharks. I don't want to be the Ryan that drowned in a river. Right? I don't even want to be the Ryan that has to rely on a near death to be special, to be some kind of influence in someone's life. I don't want to rely on that either. I want to be the person that can take all of these weaknesses or these events of tragedy and turn them into personal truth and change. Because evolution, good or bad, whether it's believed by those people that hold the book or not, evolution is a place where you evolve, where you become more capable of surviving and thriving, and you adapt, right? You become flexible. And this is why we know repetition will be part of the way to rekindle this connection to get yourself out of that story. So when you think about, if my repetition is really working to keep me stuck, repetition is also going to work to keep me moving forward. And that's when you get into the affirmations and visualization. In part 2 of this, we'll talk about those types of things. But think about that and let this sink in for a second. So when you create a permanent link to a story of suffering, you've replaced all of your positive beliefs with negative beliefs. You've replaced the potential of the story to be stuck in it with the lack. So you're not speaking from a place of abundance. You're not aligned with the abundance that would bring you out of the story. You're aligned with the abundance that keeps you stuck in the story. So then we start to see correspondence in the Hermetics as above, so below. Abundance is abundance is abundance. An abundance of poor is abundance of rich. It's the same energy, just different evolution, a different outcome, a different. You're getting. It's the same position, the same process, just pointed at different opposite directions. So the most effective way of working with this is to change this on the subconscious level where this is being held hostage. Because right now, your subconscious doesn't know what to do. Your ego has adopted this story of suffering and the victim mindset because it doesn't see it as something that is a lack. It sees it as an access point to acquire new information, connection, and love, and acknowledgement. there's this method that I tried called the Sedona method, and it incorporates a little bit of hypnosis and some subconscious suggestions and EFT and EMDR and other things. And that's another route that you can go. But you've got to start to realize that when you're getting out of this and you want to retell this new story, just dissolving the belief because it doesn't make sense isn't going to be all that you've got to do. You've got to free yourself from the story. You've got to free your mind and move the mind into new possibilities, right? And at the moment, these may seem like they're unavailable to you. So then you've got to look, okay, how am I attached to this story? How am I attached to the story, to the structure of this place? How am I attached to my injury? How am I attached to that bad relationship? How am I attached to alcohol? How am I attached to being poor? How am I attached to being a victim? How am I attached to this? Why can't I move forward? And then you get to a place after you've had the dark night. You get to a place where you can see the sunrise from a distance. You can see where you want to be, right? But because you're not dealing with the subconscious and the body that's holding these things in honor of your experience, they're holding those for you in place. We just believe that we can put a Post-it on the wall or build a dream board and we can somehow get out of it without going through it. We can get past it without letting go of it. We can ignore it, but no, you have to consciously let go, right? You have to let go, and you have to learn that you are repeating a pattern, not because the pattern is showing up, but because you're choosing it. And I've learned all this the hard way, trust me. So the pattern, when we're meeting the same people, getting stuck in the same thing, finding ourselves with the same situation, it's because you are aligned with it. You are making a choice to be there. It's not just showing up haphazardly. You're much more powerful than that. And if you don't want to give yourself that kind of credit and that kind of power, you're going to be stuck for quite some time. But once you recognize your power and once you recognize that you're stuck because you're attached to things and that you've ingrained this in your subconscious and that you've created an alignment of your future and your goals to give you the same kind of connection to the past so that you don't have to move forward because it's comfortable. You've become attached to the story. And the subconscious and the ego are saying, hey, this past event is who I am. This is the person. And now you're in this state, most of you probably, where you're starting to say, just like the truth is coming out with the aliens and the government and the vaccines and the World Economic Forum, just like all of these truths are coming out, everyone's so astonished, right? Oh my God. These things have been talked about for hundreds of years. You know, it's like, even the craziness that's happening right now, you know, have you ever, Caligula, right? Where Nero was playing the violin when Rome was burning. I mean, Babel, Sodom and Gomorrah. So there's been examples of everything that's happening over and over and over because we repeat it, because being a victim is so easy. Being somebody beyond that, being the hero is harder. And I hope for you that you can see the hero inside of you, because if you can become the hero, the heroine, not the drug, but the character, if you can become the hero, if you can become Hera, right? Then you tap into the divine feminine, you tap into the ability to break free. You realize that the patriarchy is still, all of this is still the patriarchy. This is all still the bourgeois class. This is everything that's happening right now. Even the disclosure events are all still slated under the masculine. It's not the man. It's not the masculine that's men. It's the injured men, the little men. It's the Napoleonic people. It's the people that are stuck in castles behind walls. It's the people that had to use power to have power, right? They had to amass massive amounts of wealth because they didn't have anything within them. They're people that are stuck in the victim story. And they've manifested the antithesis of the victim story to such a degree they become kings and queens of the victim mindset. And they need servants. They need subservient people to that victim set. And they find them because being a victim is so much easier than being a hero. It's much harder to be Superman than it is to be the person he's saving. Because when you choose to be a hero, you're choosing life, you're choosing love, you're choosing the power that's within you to show up, to make a difference. You're choosing the ability to not lose yourself to the past, to not lose yourself to anger, to not lose yourself to something so far beneath what you're capable of, right? And then when you do this, you start to release these past events, right? You start moving into this new place. You start letting go. And then you start feeling this way that you feel like, I'm feeling more empowered, I'm feeling more open, I'm feeling more positive. And then basically what happens is I open myself up to new experiences, and then all these things that were preventing me from having focus in my future, they start to fade away. And then these things that are all these negative things that kept popping up as a pattern, I realize that they're a pattern, and I start letting go of the resentment, and I start letting go of the anger and the pain and the grief and the regret, and I stop telling myself the same story. And then all these people and places and things that I'm holding on to no longer hold me hostage, and I'm able to walk away. And I'm not perpetuating this continual amount of suffering. My present state becomes present, not a repetition. Help. It doesn't become a repetition of the past. Right? And it requires you to shape a new mindset. It requires you to see the future from a different perspective. It requires you to only see the potential, only see the positive. And it doesn't mean that you're not recognizing the negative. It doesn't mean that you're not saying, hey, there's a problem here that has to be solved. What it means is that you're saying, hey, there's an opportunity here. You're presenting it from a place of power. When you say, there's a problem, we've got a problem, you immediately become a victim. But when you say, hey, we've got an opportunity, this is an opportunity, and then your attention starts to change, and you're in this space, you're in this new place. You go into this hero mindset. There's a lot of things that happen in the course of all this stuff. Trauma is a difficult thing to get past when you're going through it. And I don't want you to reject your past. I don't want you to try to shut it off either. You have to be careful in that sense too when you're trying to transition trauma. It's not just the story you tell yourself. It's supported. Okay, so there's a couple factors, and this is what I've kind of encountered. Because when you go to start retelling the story, or when you realize you've got to cut pieces of your life out and move forward, when you've got to let people go, or places go, or things go, when you start cleaning your life up to build that confidence, there is your ego has created a parallel with the story and the pattern. The body has stored a lot of these patterns inside of the physical form to give you support, to give you encouragement when you're repeating this victim story. So it's much like withdrawal from a drug. And I feel that what can happen if you start to penalize yourself for being stuck in the pattern. So we want to be very careful with this too. This is where coaching comes in. Like if you wanted to work with me or someone else, I would really encourage this. Like going to the gym without any knowledge of the weights or the body, and you're wanting to build a new you, and you get in there and you lift too heavy, or you do something wrong and you hurt yourself. So when you start to analyze the pattern, or when you have this aha moment and you realize, I got to switch this. I don't want to be this person anymore. There's a lot of different things that you want to really look at as you start to do that, because when you start to see, because you don't want to do it judgmentally, because when you start to access these anchors that you've placed pretty deep, and you call this out, you don't want to trigger self-doubt. You don't want to trigger self-worthiness, or a lack of self-worthiness. You don't want to trigger like a lack of self-love. You don't want to do things that are going to prevent a positive outcome. You don't want to attack yourself. You don't want to approach this like with guns blazing. You want to do this with grace and kindness, and you want to do this. You want to cultivate this field so that it will grow crops. You don't want to burn it to the ground. So what happens is, and I've learned this through trial and error. I attacked this for myself. I attacked it when I was 32, 30-ish. And I really attacked. I became a stunt man. So I got out of my fear box and being afraid of PTSD and everything else. I went to the exact opposite, and I burned it to the ground. I burned the connection with. I didn't talk to my mom for 7 years. I burned everything and everyone that was about the old self to the ground. What happened is I was ungrounded, and I made myself feel guilt because I was holding on, or because I knew that was who I once was. So I was moving forward, but not from a place of fullness. I was moving, so my trauma was still holding me back, even though I had broken free from the people, the places, and the behavior. The way I did it was I broke me, right? I broke the vessel. So I couldn't hold the new story. I was leaking like a sieve, trying to constantly pour new story in, new story in, new story in. So I was trying too hard. I was trying to be something too much. I was reading and doing this, trying to fill the void, right? Because I blew it up. So I want to say that from my hindsight, that we can do this in a way where we are able to shift those aspects of you and remodel them, renovate them. We're able to reclaim those pieces of your life in a way that's positive. We're able to turn that guilt into gratitude. We're able to take that trauma and make it truth. We're able to take that pain and make it positive. And it takes a lot more work, and you're going to move a little bit slower, but the accomplishment here will be that your alignment will be long-term. And it won't be going from one self-destructive behavior pattern and alignment to an incident to another one, right? So then you're not jumping train tracks. And it's important to work through these ideas and feelings so that you can let go of the past in a healthy way, in a way that's not harming you, in a way that's not holding you back, and then realize that you also have to do body work. One of my favorites is my butterfly hug. When I'm stressed out, I'll tell you, I almost went through I almost died again last July. And I do this. I do my butterfly hug. Oh my God, this is my hug, and I just love myself, and I bring it back. Or I'll do my hands. I'll bring my hands over, and I'll bring them back, and I'll bring where your hands are in like this. So I'll put them out. I'll put my hands out like this, and then bring them back and hold my hands like this. And then I'll do my somatics way. So that way, I know that these things are also in my body, and I know that because of Messages in Water, that great book, that sweating, crying, and releasing liquid, flushing, doing cleanses, juice cleanses, water fasts, also bring that through, having water that's very empowered in electrolytes. So when you just have naked water that's just got nothing in it, it actually is imploding some of the information that you're trying to leave, and it scatters more, and it's going to ingrain. And this is a little bit outside the technique of that, but this is what we would work on in the personal space. So even the type of water that you're drinking, the way that you're drinking, and the way that you're moving, and the things that you're adding into your experience will help you to acclimate this process in a proactive way across the board. And it's going to give you so much more depth. So then, as you begin to identify the past version of you and you move into this new identity, your limiting belief about yourself is going to shift. And then you're going to give yourself support and nutrients and supply yourself with a new process to bring that to. You're not breaking the pattern, you're releasing the pattern, because you're realizing that the pattern no longer serves you. You're turning that frown upside down into a smile, and you're realizing, wait, okay, so I've gone through so much. I'm transforming these things. I'm going through this. So my past has been filled with events and experiences and relationships that have shaped who I am today, but I'm not limited by who I was. So I can change these things. I can alter these things, and I can actually evolve, and I can tap into my power, and I can reinvent myself at any time. And even when a little bubble pops, and that's a piece of the past, I don't punish myself for it. I acknowledge it. I accept it. And I'm like, okay, That's so crazy. It's like the curse jar when you're a kid. You drop $1 in the jar and you're like, it showed up. Fantastic. I'm not going to let just this one little snap, crackle, pop push me to the side. I'm on my way. And in fact, I start to look at those times when I catch myself that I'm releasing myself from the expectation of having to be at a certain pace, but I'm also able to identify those factors from the past, and I'm becoming much more fluid and much more dynamic in dealing with these little things that pop up, rather than devoting myself to feeling guilty about it or really causing a lot of self-reflection on it. It becomes quick and it's intimate and it's boom and it's instant. And I'm, oh my God, and then let it go. I have to practice the art of acknowledging, accepting, and letting it go and keep going, right? So I start to release myself from the expectations associated with the old identity, and I start allowing myself to be more fluid, more positive, more here. I start allowing myself to step into the process of growth, and I allow myself the freedom to explore new things, new interests, new ways, new people, new processes. And I start to understand my decisions, my reality, my environment, my nutrition. All those things really, really affect the full story. And I need a shift. I need 100% shift, right? I need a shift. Even if it's just shifting from Snickers to a better version of a Snickers, right? I need to shift. It's the words even that I'm using, right? Your dream board, if you've got anything on your dream board that's been up there for 5 years, you need to alter it and redo it. And personally, I like to do words on my dream board because words are where my power lives. Pictures are the product of my words. Pictures are the product of what I'm telling myself. So the picture gives me an easy target, but I want to establish a line that goes beyond that. I'm tapping into my infinite self. The word, a word, is really a spell that creates the constant that brings you to this fullness of never-ending story. So you're going from the old story to a never-ending story that's going to be new. You're developing a book just like they developed the Harry Potter series. Every chapter is new, moving forward, a new you, a new way. No longer in the grip of your past, empowering yourself, creating a new narrative, embracing growth, challenging these limited beliefs, releasing attachment to old stories, and healing from these traumas because you're not identifying them and that you're realizing that they don't serve you anymore. So you're freeing yourself from the hold that they have on you, and you're creating this space for personal growth. You're putting yourself in an empowered, fulfilling future. And this is really pivotal, and it requires work. And that work can be very fulfilling if you believe you're worth it. That's the first hurdle. Are you worth the work it will take to have the new future? And then you want to measure up. And this is where I really had to look at myself in the mirror. And this is where I really developed mirror work for those of you that want to get involved in that later when we do the group. We're going to start it in August. We're going to get past this Venus retrograde before we start the mirror work. And we're going to do a group through soc.live, and I really encourage you to be part of that. I also really encourage you to come to the full moon for Aquarius that we're going to do on the 1st of August. The links will be in the description. But when you are establishing the value of what you went through versus what you can be, or who you were for who you can be, the value that you have to date, I'm going to say doesn't measure up to what you believe that you want or could get. And let's say this is the level that my past has put me at, so I'm here right now. This is where I want to be. I can't get here if I hold on to here. So you have to be willing to let go of whatever is in the way, even if it's love. Because that love isn't love at the highest level if it's holding you back. That love should support you to move forward and become your best self, even if it's a mother, brother, father, whatever it is. Blood's not thicker than water. Water's what makes blood. So if you start to realize, if you're here and this is with the old story and you want to be here, you don't get here by staying here. And everything that's here is going to hold you here. To get here, you have to have a completely new set of rules, a new set of things. New job, possibly. New love, possibly. New friends, most likely. New mentor, definitely. New messages, most likely. New books, new adventures, new vacations. And the first way you know if you're ready to do the work is if you can take and create 5 minutes for yourself that's not going to be a whiny, mamby-pamby story. And then to move out of being a maybe baby, you have to live a yes and no life. You have to go yes and no. And even if you make a mistake and you say no to something that you realize in hindsight should have been a yes, better to realize it and to recollect and to learn along the way than to stay stuck in the maybe baby style where you're like, I don't know. That will not work. That's not going to create change for you. You have to be yes and no, because your discernment, your intuition moves in yes and no. Your instinct your instinct is fight, flight, or flee. Or fight, flight, or freeze is what your instinct is, right? Freeze, fight, or flight. So that would be where the maybe lives. The maybe is in the instinct more than it is in the intuition. Your discernment gives you yes and no. And I'll tell you what, the fastest way to move, like, you know how the speed dating? If your discernment is high, speed dating is definitely the way for you, because you could be like, nope, 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 nope. You could just walk up and just get the energy, and you're like, nope, nope, yes. And you sit down, and the other person may not know it's a yes yet, but and then just because it's a yes for you doesn't mean it's a yes for them, but you learn along the way. So basically, right, when you start getting your discernment and you practice yes and no, when you practice the and the and you realize that there's a lot more here than just meets the eye, and then the maybe is that questioning, that self-doubt, that victim story, where you're not being able to confirm and be affirmative with your life, with your word, with your worth. Maybe means that you don't recognize your self-worth and you're not speaking your truth. When you've got maybes everywhere, it means that you don't know who you are, and you're afraid to be your truth. So this is the first part we practice with. Now so obviously we're at an hour and this podcast is pretty long. There's a minute I got to cut out for it. So if you are in the community right now, let's see. Here's one thing I wanted to do. So I'm going to close out this episode, and I'm going to continue on to answer some questions in the community chat real quick, and we're going to just do an energy update. But just to remind you that the community, let me do this. I have this as well. So I'm going to put this up. I'm going to show you this where you're at. So this is the Aquarius full moon event that's coming up on August 1st. It's going to be at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Go to soc.live, or you can look at the links, or you can even just send me a contact at info@ryankeys.com. Now, and the other thing that I wanted to do is I'm going to just throw this up in there. So that is the Aquarius event. And again, this is if you'd like a personal in-depth I Ching life path or any kind of report. If you want to do some deeper work, you can also contact me here at ryankeys.com. I've got some really great content coming out on how to do this, because I've become very aware that the nature of the way AI is learning, we also can learn along the same pattern. AI is assimilating knowledge rather than going through it. It's getting to know you by your habits and by who you are, by how you sound, by how you write, by your cadence, by your construct, by the way you construct the sentence. So AI is learning everything in a different way, in a different volume of a package, rather than just sitting down and reading a book or listening to a show. So I've developed a way, I'm sure it's not completely all mine. I'm sure there's other people that have the same thought, right? Because that's what happens. But for me, it's all mine. A way to put information out there for you that you can read, you can download, but also at the same time you can listen to it, and there is a multi-frequency going on behind the words that will help you to learn the frequency and the information on a quantum level to help you to understand and to comprehend just in a similar way that AI is learning about you. And this will create that dynamic learning environment between both hemispheres of the brain. Tapped into the Monroe Institute, tapped into some of the stuff I learned in my 20s working for a particular place I can't say, and doing remote viewing. But we're bringing that to the way we're learning. I do this a lot in my meditations, and you'll notice there'll be a lot of visualizations and things that'll come through that I'm not talking about, because the sound that I'm using and the way that I put cross sounds in, I do it specifically, and I choose the word specifically so that we can interact these downloads in a light and a sound code kind of way. So that's also something that we do there. And I'm going to be bringing those products out. You'll be able to check those out at ryankeys.com. And I would love for you to come over to soc.live. Now, and once again, for the reference of the show, this is the title, Digging Deep, Letting Go of the Past. This is part 1. We're going to do part 2. Part 2 is going to come out next week. Part 2 is going to be about how to embrace your power and unlock that potential. How can we recognize these things, and some tips on how we can start to transition. Remember, if you're feeling overwhelmed, butterfly hug it out, right? Butterfly hug. You can tap on the heel of your palm as well. You can tap on you can tap in between where your third eye is, or at the where if you'd have a dimple in your chin. That's a great place there too for EFT. I found those places to be very powerful. So I am out of here, guys. Thank you for being part of the School of Consciousness podcast. I'm Ryan Keys, your host. And once again, if you have a near-death experience where we can actually talk about, wait, what happened? You flatlined? Where in the heck was this? Dive in deep with me. I would love to bring you on the podcast. Please contact me at info@RyanKeys so we can do that. And if you have any other things that you feel are of value to come on the podcast for, you can also contact me there. I appreciate you. Thank you for being around, being here, and being part of this evolution in life. I really appreciate it. Peace, light, and love.